Welcome to another episode of Jesus for Mormons. I am Kai. I spent over 30 years in the Mormon church, and this is my story of what I did after leaving the Mormon church.
I'm Di. I'm a pastor at Venture Church, and your friend, and your co-host, and along for the ride.
All right. So we've had a kind of a mini series here where we've talked about some of the bias that people leave the Mormon church with towards religion after they leave. And the title of this episode is Why I Hated Brandon. All right.
Is this where we insert that I'm married to Brandon?
We were going to get to that,
but
okay. That's okay.
Spoiler.
All right. So I think it's important to set the stage that we talked about this bias that we have, and I cited three things. I cited Joseph Smith history, a talk by Brad Wilcox that was recently given within the last few years, and a part of the temple endowment. And each one of those show how, one, the church may undermine belief system outside of the Mormon church, and how, as I put it, poisons the well of future faith. So I wanted to, one of the thing that I feel that most people are the most familiar with, wow, that was really wordy. What I feel people are the most familiar with is in Joseph Smith's history, where he talks about the response that he got from God about other churches when what God and Jesus told him during the first vision, as we would call it. And what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to change the words to insert, because it's kind of old English. They use kind of some terms that may not...
that makes it sound more holy, though.
Yeah, maybe it does. So I wanted to change it just so that we wouldn't see it from maybe an 1820s lens, but maybe we'd see it from a 2024-ish lens.
Okay.
So this is from Joseph Smith history, and this is after after Joseph asked, "Which church should I join?" I was answered from God that I must join none of them, for they were all wrong. And God, who addressed me, said that all their religious beliefs were disgusting or hated in his sight, that those pastors were all corrupt, and that they draw near to me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They teach for the doctrines and commandments of man, having a form of godliness, but they deny the power thereof. All right. So that's one that that a lot of Mormons are very familiar with. And I think with keeping that quote in mind, that leads me to my first sit-down interaction with someone that I viewed as one of those pastors who was corrupt. Pastor Brandon of our church, or of the church that I currently go to. So Di, you already stole my thunder on this one, but who is Brandon?
Well, besides my husband of 30, almost 2 years, and father to our 3 children and our son-in-law, he is a passionate lover of Jesus and people. He's a very strong leader. He and I together pastor Venture Church, which we planted 20 years ago. And he is ridiculously into sports, having fun, traveling. He's a goofball. He's super intense when he's in leading something or goal-oriented. But then when he's just out at a ball game or something, he's just all about having fun. He collects a lot of ridiculous things. So if it's in your camera shot right now, all of the strange items in this office, it's because he's a collector of things when he travels, and people bring him funny gifts. And so he's a well-rounded, average Joe human being who just likes people and Jesus and fun.
All right.
How's that?
That's good. I've also heard him referred to as Di's husband
Oh.
and the pastor's husband.
Oh, I have not.
That was a little joke to church on Sunday when
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Okay. This is where I say, don't get me started.
anyways.
Yes. And also, he's a doctor.
He
has a PhD.
He does. Yeah, he has his doctorate. So Doctor.
Doctor.
Brandon Beals. So should I have changed the title to this to Why I Hated
Dr. Brandon
Dr.
Beals?
Brandon Beals? Okay.
Well, he wasn't a doctor when you met him, so no, you're good.
I'm good. Okay. Well, good. So I wanted to set the stage for who he was. And then before that, my religious belief, even though I had, at the time, kind of abandoned my Mormon theology, I was still holding on to that belief that he was corrupt and that his ideas were disgusting or hated to God.
I might ask questions on this one because I just want to see this through your eyes. So the first time you saw him, and I think you alluded to this in one episode, but what things were you looking for that lined up with that preconceived belief? Like what things made you go, oh, see, check, corrupt. Oh, check, that checks out.
You're kind of skipping to the end, but I'm still going to answer the question.
All right.
I think there is an eye test and a
like you didn't
there's
know
there's a lot of people worship in the church. I feel like and probably in Christianity in religion, right? Like people saying the humble brag, the well, I just care so much about people that it's like, oh my gosh. And so I guess I was kind of looking a little bit for that too, right?
Okay.
Like this this false virtue.
That's what I was just going to say, like a false front or something.
Yeah, which does not fit your husband.
No, what you see is what you get. Starting with the tattoos on him.
Yeah, and just the way that he talks and the looseness. But I was kind of looking for that false virtue, that whole like, oh, I am so spiritual and I'm so much more spiritual than everyone else. And that's why I'm the leader of this church. Not because of anything else, just my,
Just induces a gag reflex in me, but continue.
Okay. All right. We went down that bunny trail to start. So this is me and his first interaction.
Okay.
He comes up to me and he says, hey, Kai, I want to do coffee with you. And I'm coming into it, obviously, with this lens. So I want you to imagine ex-Mormon, angry, bitter. I look at him, I say, I don't drink coffee.
That was a good response.
Never drank coffee. He's like,
he doesn't really like coffee either.
now are you trying to make him virtuous? No, just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Not for virtue.
Okay.
Taste.
For what?
Taste.
Oh, for taste. Okay. So I said, I'm an ex-Mormon. I don't drink coffee. He says, well, I would like to meet up with you and get to know you. And I said, okay, sure. So I took this meeting as not really me meeting him, but me telling him how I felt about religion, how I felt about my family going to this church, really how I felt about my family going from a religious system that I thought was incredibly false to kind of another religious system that I feel is false. And so we meet up and we're meeting there, and I'm kind of coming up with, and I like to plan. I like to schedule things. If you can kind of tell from this podcast, I like to write things out and kind of go in with a plan. So I have one of my wife's best friends, her husband's brother, if you can follow that logic, used to work here at this church.
Whoa, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm not going to say names because it's not a positive story.
Okay.
Used to work here at this church, and he was quickly fired from working here.
Okay.
And my wife's husband told me the story and was
your wife's friend's husband. You are your wife's husband.
Am I? Yeah, that's right. My wife.
Just trying to make that clarification for the records.
If you guys ever thought I was smart, here's that moment. No, so he used to work here at the church, and he was like fired within like a month.
Okay.
Like very quickly. And so I'm talking to him, and I'm kind of like using this as a way to kind of like poke at him. Like be like, hey, you had this guy, like I'm friends with this guy's brother. And here you are, you just like fired him. Like kind of like you're a crappy guy because you know, he looks at me just like deadpan and just says, I don't know what to tell you. He was like the worst employee I've ever had. And I'm like, that's not the risk. Like, you're supposed to apologize to me, sir. Didn't want to go down that road with me, which I thought was kind of funny in this, like, and now that I look back on this experience, it's kind of a funny idea. But I told him why I was meeting with him. I was meeting with him because my wife and kids go to this church. And I was really there to vet him, to make sure that he was not a terrible person, even though I kind of assumed he was.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see what he was about. And I said, my wife and kids are going to keep coming, but I don't think you or anyone at this church is better than them. I don't, and that's still a truth that I hold. Like, I think that a truly spiritual person should not people worship anyone at their church.
Yep. That's an interesting thing to go for, though. I think that comes from the space rented in your mind a little bit.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you look at somebody in position. You look at like a bishop. And
Right.
you'd be like,
Right.
oh my gosh, I bet you he is just so spiritual.
Yeah. And this person is appointed to hear from God on my behalf, kind of a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so I guess I just wanted to kind of set that ground rule that, hey, I don't think that
How did he respond?
He's just like, okay. Like I'm like, no, you're supposed to fight with me. Let's go. You know, like
Okay.
let's do this. You know, like you're supposed to be.
I probably would have, if you said that to me, I probably would have said, true.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Well, but I
agree.
But in the Mormon church, like a bishop holds a mantle, you know, where he has this supernatural, he can tell like gift of discernment, as they would call it. So like he could figure out like if two people, like there's a marriage conflict, he could be like, oh, that person's being truthful, this person's being dishonest, like kind of mediate, because he can like, anyways.
Oh.
Yeah. So there's some ideas like behind that I just, you know, I was still carrying some theology, some theological ideas with me. So it was not a like warm and fuzzy interaction. It wasn't like, hey, you know, you're a Huskies fan. I've been a Huskies fan my whole life. Oh, you're a Mariners fan. I've been a Mariners. It was not that type of, It was a very like, hey, I'm here to kind of tell you how I feel about you, which is not positive. And, you know, kind of combative and like, hey, like, I don't really care what your opinion is of me because I'm kind of over this religion thing. And so we kind of had this talk, and I think it got a little awkward maybe because of my standoffishness and maybe my I have, some people are passive aggressive. I'm just aggressive.
I appreciate that because then I know where I stand with someone.
Yeah, I think it's great too. And I like people that are very direct. And so I kind of told him this, and this is how I recollect Brandon responding back to me. I think in kind of an awkward pause is how my mind goes to it. He says, well, you don't seem to really like me.
Oh.
But really, you don't know me. How about this? I'm starting a men's group. We get together every other week for a year. If you join that, after that, you can either decide if I am I think he said tool. I can't remember.
Okay.
I think that's the term he
That's a
used.
go-to for him.
If I'm a tool, but at least after that year, you'll know that, as opposed to how you feel about me right now. You don't actually know. So
What was your reaction to that?
I mean, my initial brain reaction was like, no, like I don't want people to preach to me, especially in a smaller setting.
Yeah.
Like you come into church.
Yeah, you can hide a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like it's dark and there's a band there and like really you got 7, 8, 10 minutes of interaction. If you really want to get in and get out,
Yeah.
you know, you can hide. The idea of being in this really tight circle, but I did like that he was kind of calling me out a little bit. Like I thought that was kind of an interesting tactic. I don't know if it was a tactic. I don't know if it was
That's just how he is.
I thought maybe he's trying to be all things to all people. I don't know. But you know, he was just like, you really don't know what and it did kind of there was kind of this like appeal to my like, oh, I am kind of being a little bit of a jerk. You know what I mean? Like he kind of put it out there like you actually don't know anything about, which is true, right? Which is very, very true statement. And so we're sitting there and we kind of were like and I was like, I don't know, I'm gonna have to think about it. And we're kind of like going through it. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna be going to this church. Like I'm gonna be my family comes here every week. You know, I don't necessarily support it at this point, but like we're here. We go here. So I might as well like get to know this guy, you know, and my wife would be supportive of this type of, you know, arrangement, right? And so like at the end of it, I was like, I don't know, let me text you if that will work. But I was kind of like on the fence about doing it. Like I could have gone either way. So the funny part about this interaction is that I remember getting in my car and being like, if this interaction is this guy's job, like that job must suck. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if it's just like meeting with like a bunch of angry, disgruntled, non-religious-y people who like, you know, like I was, like that must be a terrible job. So with this, Di, I'm sure you've had like similar experiences. Maybe this is like looking behind the curtain of pastoral-ing. What have you had that? Have you had like people? I mean, I'm sure you've over the years you've met with people, and I guess what's kind of your reaction to that?
I don't want to come off like I'm unscathed or nothing ever affects me, but I think generally speaking, I have pretty thick skin, and I think that I have matured in that I can usually see when somebody's hurt and they're lashing out, and I happen to be the closest person, which does not mean it doesn't hurt, but I usually have enough grace to see that a hurt person or a wounded animal who feels maybe cornered or out of control just tends to lash out. I think the popular phrase that I keep hearing right now is, who hurt you? That's usually what's in my head is, gosh, who hurt you? That this is what is immediately coming out. But yes, it is common. I think this might sound unbelievable, but I try to, if this is my only interaction with a person, I try not to do more damage. I try to refrain from adding on to damage and judgment and whatever else, and just be gracious and hope that they'll get in their car and go, maybe that guy or that girl wasn't really trying to pin me down on something or convict me or make me feel guilty or save me or batter me into a belief system. Maybe they just actually wanted to get to know me. And so I hope that that's how it feels to somebody. But sure, yeah, I could tell stories.
Well, I think, yeah, and I guess I went into it thinking a certain way and thinking, I mean, I think you have to paint the picture of Venture too, of the church that we're going to. It's a large church. Like I don't know how many people it can seat. You probably know that off the top of your head. And then you have a stage and you have a person up there. I kind of expected a lot more arrogance in my meeting with him.
Yeah.
And I kind of got the opposite. And I think that bothered me too, that I kind of had it pegged wrong. You know what I mean? Like I kind of expected him to be like, no, I am a really good guy. I'm like the best guy. I'm like, and he was just like, oh, I don't know. Like I have kind of the same sort of things that you go through. And so I think that really the way that this situation impacted me was that I think there is so much position worship, people worship in the Mormon church, like a title like there's this saying, once a bishop, always a bishop. So like if you would refer to somebody who got released after like 5-ish years from service, from doing that, like if you called on them in like a gospel doctrine or something, you would still call them Bishop Smith, Bishop Young.
Sort of like President of the United States.
Yes.
We might throw in former president, but usually they just retain the title.
Yeah, and so Unless
they are particular presidents, then maybe not.
Yeah, we won't go off into
nope.
that. But I thought that title and kind of like what this is, which is a pretty high production church, I kind of thought that would carry its way over into meeting. And really, it was the opposite. Like he wasn't trying to be hyper spiritual. He wasn't trying to be like,
I'm above you.
Oh, I have this like position, we would call it mantle in the church, that makes me so amazing compared to you. Like you should be grateful to be me. Like it was never any of that. And so I think that kind of just that difference, which is a really stark difference, was really surprising to me.
Did it disarm you a little bit?
It kind of stopped me in my tracks. I kind of like to know, I'm a competitor. I like to know who I'm going up against. And so for me to kind of read that so wrong was a little bit annoying to me. Maybe I feel like I got a little outplayed, which is maybe, I'm a competitor. So I feel that way. So I think that was interesting. And it also made me like view him and say like, this is somebody that is just trying to have a walk with God as like a normal person. And in that walk, he is also running a church. Like the church and what he does in the church is not his identity.
Right.
That says like,
it's perceptive.
Hey, I'm saved because I am like running a great church. Like it's a church that's growing. Therefore I am like righteous.
Yeah.
Right. It was kind of the opposite perspective. It was just like, I'm a normal guy. I got to work through a bunch of stuff. I got to, I still have to, as you put it, in process.
Yeah.
Right. And so I thought that was just kind of an interesting, situation to be in. So I get in my car and I drive off, and I'm just kind of like, oh my gosh, now I got to go. I kind of was not very kind in this meeting, but I'm still going to go back to that church because my family and all of that go there. And so I think it's good to give this perspective so that people, and I've heard Brandon tell this story before, so that people can know that it's not just like a direct transfer. It's actually really hard. And I think that there's pent up frustrations, pent up feelings and emotions that can come out and do come out. And that previous wiring that a lot of us have who used to be in the church, it doesn't just leave. It's there, and it creates this bias, like we talked about in the previous episode. That bias can continue, and I think it's important for people to just recognize that in their interactions and in their feelings, towards maybe starting a new faith journey. So
I definitely, as I just hear the context of your meeting with Brandon and then your question you asked me, I just, in my head is, all these people are popping up in my mind that have just come to me or to us or to this place with a lot of baggage, with a lot of pain. And that sometimes is from the Mormon church. Sometimes it's from a different Christian church. Sometimes it's from the Catholic Church. Sometimes it's from parents who said that they believed in God but mistreated their children. I mean, it could be a lot of things. And what do we do with that baggage? People are, it's a journey. And I have a friend who used to always say, that guy over there or that girl over there, she's on a long journey and she's carrying a lot of bags. And that sometimes you can just see that on people. And I think having patience and grace for them. I just want to be kind, and that doesn't make me weak or anything else. I just want to leave people with fingerprints of kindness on them so that I don't add to the pain. That's my big goal there. Is I just don't want to add more damage to a damaged person. And sometimes I could probably argue I have the right to. Sometimes I could, you just mistreated me. Now let me just tell you, or let me put you in your place. And that, I just think that takes some maturity and probably the work of the Lord in your heart to soften you, to just be able to go, it's not going to help them at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something I'm still, I would say, working on, because I still do have this, anger, right? that exists. And I'm not, I think it's one thing to look at your circumstances and look at, and to maybe not take personal responsibility for that. And I think that at times I would like to say that I'm not responsible for my interactions with Brandon, right? During our first meet, but I am responsible for those things, even though I came in with a very negative lens towards him and towards his profession and towards what he does. I still, from being, maybe hardwired in the church, I still have to be responsible for those,
But the good thing is he didn't hold it against you. And there's a grace there to let you be in the midst of kind of the mess of it and working through it. And he didn't add on to now add more baggage onto you.
That's true. Yeah, that would be one more one more strike against Christianity and against belief in general. So, yeah, I think that all of those things are really important, and I think it's like with this, I think it's important for us to give grace to people who are coming out of any type of, like transition, whatever that is, right? Whether that's faith transition, whether that's a marital transition, whether that's a just life transition. I think that, and I'm not the best at it. I mean, you look through, I don't know, the things I post on Facebook sometimes. I mean, I am not the best at giving grace and giving, love, but at the same time, like I am appreciative of people who have done that for me, and who have kind of loved me unconditionally, whether I worshiped the ground that they walked on, which is what I thought the expectation was when I met with Brandon, or not. I'm glad that he kind of unconditionally tried to diffuse the situation without kind of taking offense.
I think we live in a culture of like, how dare you? How dare you talk to me that way? I'm going to post a review. How dare you? I'm going to tell everyone I know. How dare you? And when you come across someone who not only isn't ruffled by your how dare yous, but is also not returning them, like I feel like we look at that and do this like, what do I do with this? I don't even know what to do with that. And I don't want to be a how dare you person.
Yeah.
Quick story that is mostly irrelevant except for the how dare you. I went to have my car serviced, and this woman, when I walked in, was screaming at the service manager. And she was screaming, how dare you put me through this? And she was, it was ugly. And I'm like, oh man, what did I just walk into? And he's being so patient and like, I'm so sorry for your inconvenience. I'm so, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to make this right. We're going to go above and beyond. We want to take good care of you. Finally calms her down and she leaves. And I look at him and I say, I'm so sorry. I don't know what has happened here, but you do not deserve that. And he said, her low tire pressure indicator keeps coming on. And I just thought, like, is that the world we live in? That we just get the right to just put someone on blast? And I wanted to just follow her out the door and say, who hurt you? Like, what did someone do to you to make you this angry? But his ability to, it just felt so unfair to me to just take the heaping anger that he did not deserve and just be gracious. She's got to walk away and figure out what to do with that anger because he didn't receive it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, he didn't make it worse to give her the right. Like, see, then he treated me like this. How dare him? And I want to be that person that diffuses people with the kindness and love, even if it's not about, quote unquote, if they deserve it. That's not what unconditional love is. Anyway,
well,
the end.
Well, I think you need to rub off on me a little bit. Anyways, if you ever thought I was perfect.
No, none of us are.
Oh, I thought you were saying, no, Kai, we know you're
none
not
of us
perfect.
are. None of us fit in that category.
So to answer, I think it's interesting to ask the question, do I still hate Brandon?
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you teed me up and I didn't ask.
Yeah.
Kai.
Well,
Kai, do you still hate Brandon?
I don't. Okay. I really respect what he's about, and I love that it is so opposite to what I grew up in.
Yeah.
Like, I love that it is so different and, I mean, very authentic, very like just people. I mean, it's just people. Like, there is no, because really, what does it matter if I think he's the greatest guy or I think he's the worst? Like, if who you're looking to be judged by is God, what is it that I care about? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I just like just how real like our interactions have been. I think has been really. And
you took his invitation. You took him up on it.
I did. I took him up on the invitation.
Joined the year-long group.
I joined the year-long group, which I want to talk about this one point. Hopefully I'm not going like super far over.
You're good.
But I joined the group, and what's weird to me about him, and so the group was, I don't know, 20 guys, maybe?
Oh, that's a lot.
Yeah, 15, 20, I think it was like 20. 20 guys. You have me, a very negative person towards religion. And I think a lot of times, I mean, maybe this is just anecdotal for me, but people who have really strong opinions against the church, they kind of get moved off into this area, right? Like, you're not, like, if you were in, for those Mormons, if you were in gospel doctrine class and you were like, yeah, I just think Joseph Smith is, and you say something historically accurate, like, I don't like how polygamy was and how he married a 14-year-old girl, you're going to get escorted out. And they're going to be like, yeah, you can't say that anymore. Like, you're not welcome to have those doubts, right? And then I look at like, oh, Brandon's like willing to subject all of these people to my negative anti-Christian rhetoric and ideas. And I'm not a believer. Like, this wasn't a club of like heart, even though everyone else was a believer and everyone else was in. This wasn't like, oh, you aren't righteous enough.
Yeah.
You aren't saved, so you can't be in this group.
Yeah.
And I think he kind of, I shouldn't put any words into his mouth, but he probably feels that like his beliefs can kind of stand on their own.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I guess that's maybe a little bit of a projection, but he might feel that, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I guess I should ask somebody.
That's fair. And if that was me in that situation, I would feel the same way. In fact, I love to come alongside of people who have deep, unsettling questions and just and just sit with them and listen as they talk it out. In fact, I did that last night until 10 p.m. I was with a group of girls who just asked really hard questions that are wrestling with things like suffering and why has my life been full of suffering and how is God good and where's his love? And I welcome those things. And if they won't ask the hard questions, I will, because I think it's important to wrestle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
and you like to wrestle, literally
love to wrestle. So even now at 35, I still wrestle a little bit. So my point in all of this is it's not like, hey, those are people who are, there's this idea of protecting the church. And then there's this idea of like, well, I'm going to fearlessly tackle questions and I'm not going to hide behind whatever.
That would be opposite of what you experienced.
That was the opposite. Yeah. Because me personally, if I'm looking to protect a brand, if I'm looking to protect an image, protect people that, I just don't want them to hear negative things about whatever, I probably would not have, if I were Brandon, I would not have invited me into, this small group, this small circle of people. And so for that, I thought that was a little interesting to me. So yes, I like Brandon. I respect him. I respect his opinion. I've had him pastor me. I've called and talked to him about different, things, this big move I'm doing, other things. And I really love him and respect his opinion. And I'm a hugger. He's not. Aside from that, I still force him to hug me. I still go up big arms, and he can't fist pound from the side. He's got a hug. So, anyways, with that being said, like I think it's really important to just look at it from a lens of what people bring in, the baggage that they bring in. And I also think it's important to say that it's okay to change that wiring that you have in your brain. That's okay. And people who really want to follow Jesus, I would like to think I'm one of them, should hopefully be there to try to help that change.
Yeah.
People aren't perfect, but
and it takes time.
Yeah, and it takes time. So, anyways,
good job.
Yeah, so that was thank you guys for joining us. This is another episode. Hopefully you guys found value in it. And until next time.
All right.